I immigrated from Ethiopia back in 2013. People tend to assume that Africa is a whole one country, but there are 54 or 53 countries in it. I had that lack of access to technology, number one. We had like once per week for 1 hour computer classes. It's not like I had a mentor. I never had a mentor until 2020. It's been only 5 years since I discovered the field, but this is my third role. I currently work as a cloud security engineer at a Fortune 500 organization, and I started as an intern, as an IT intern, interning in different departments.
Just getting started with this long journey that we call life. What are you hoping to see next?
Who says tech can't be human?
What's going on, Hacker Valley fam? Welcome back to the show. With me, I have someone special. I do a lot of research on all my guests, but this guest today, I had to put a little bit of extra love and attention into because they're doing some amazing work in the world of cybersecurity. My guest this episode describes himself as an immigrant from Ethiopia, a mother of four, a multi-award-winning cybersecurity advocate, and a 4-time best-selling author and TEDx speaker. My guest this episode is Zinet Kamal. Zinet, you've done a lot of amazing things. The next thing I'd love to add to that long list of recognition is guest on Hacker Valley Studio. Most importantly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on, Ron. Chris, and you all know that I've been a long-time fan of Hacker Valley Media from distant and closely until we finally had a chance to meet in person last month or December of 2026. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it feels like I've known you for so long, but we haven't really had a conversation until we saw each other at the Difference Makers Awards, which is kind of crazy, but I'm glad that you're finally a guest on the show, that we finally get a chance to see and speak to each other more. You are everywhere on LinkedIn. And if anyone doesn't know you, I would already recommend them to check you out. All of Zinet's information is in the show notes, but we're going to be going over all about your background. I wanted to start with something that might help tell the story of who you are as a person. The first mention that I said was immigrant from Ethiopia. Let's go back a little bit and kind of tell us about the journey from Ethiopia to the US, especially since that's a core pillar of your story that you commonly refer to.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I am an immigrant from Ethiopia. Ethiopia is eastern part of Africa. People tend to assume that Africa is a whole one country, but there are 54 or 53 countries in it. So I immigrated from Ethiopia back in 2013. So it's been 10 years since I moved to the US, and I currently reside in Minnesota. Growing up, I was born and raised in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. And I studied law, and then I worked, before I came to the US, I worked in the legal field, first as a legal intern and then as a legal advisor at a government agency. So that was like a summarized version of like my legal career before I decided to come to the US, of course, with my husband and my oldest, who is 14 now, but at the time he was three and a half. So, born and raised like a normal child, a normal African child, I would say. But I wanted to become, as a child, a doctor, a medical doctor, just because that was what is praised to become, And then, when I went to college, my parents wanted me to mostly go to the legal field because I was afraid of math and the natural sciences. It's a different educational system there. So if you choose a certain field, natural sciences, you can go to, computer science and being a doctor. But if you chose social sciences field, then you are only limited to pursuing a certain amount of fields like economics, business, and legal field as well. So the legal field was sort of chosen by my mother because she thought that, that's where the money is. I guess the parents sort of chose for me, but I had a good time in the law school there because I was able to represent the university in different legal moot courts. One in Dakar, Senegal in 2017 for an African human rights moot court competition. And then in 2018 in the US. So I came here before 2013 to the US in DC to participate in international moot court competition representing the university. The whole ICJ representing as a respondent and defendant, and we would have that is from multiple countries around the world. So I had that exposure. And then when I came here, I've always been fascinated to go into the technology and understand technology because of also I had that lack of access to technology, number one. I think I talked about this multiple places that the only class we had in high school, 11th grade and 12th grade, was we had like once per week for 1 hour computer classes, and we would be sitting in groups of 3 to 4 students, and we would be fighting to get a chance to get a stroke at the computer keyboard even. Like that was pretty much what we have, and what we learned was DOS and Word, I guess. That was it until 12th grade. And then even in college, like in law school, you don't have computing or math classes. It's a whole different thing. You learn family law, civil law, international and human rights law, of course, but nothing, math or computing. So that was a whole different experience coming here and venturing into a whole different technology school or career. So that sums it up. But if you have a specific question, I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, that is interesting. Especially, I would imagine that a lot of people probably didn't have computer classes all throughout their high school, but to fight over a set of computers or a single computer is challenging. Or it kind of reminds me of me when I was growing up. I was so obsessed with the computer, and the one place I was able to really use a computer was at my house. We had a family computer, and my sisters also loved to use the computer, and it always made it like a challenge. So what I did at some point was I installed Linux on it, just because I knew at that point they would be a little less interested in using the computer, but they still managed their way. One thing that really stands out about who you are, especially when people see you on LinkedIn or they type your name into Google, are all your books. You have quite a few books, and your books really speak to, I think, the younger generation. They speak to children, they speak to young adults. So was there anything in your childhood or your upbringing, looking back at your time in Ethiopia and transitioning to the US, that really made you want to speak to that specific demographic?
That's a good question. And earlier when you talk about the computer access, and because my name was starting with Z, we always have more than 3 students at my table for sure, because it's always the W's, X's, everyone is just like, come to the Z. But yeah, growing up, like I said, I always talk about this, I think. I never had a children book of my own, like a storybook. Of course, we would have textbooks for school, but we don't really have like children's book. I don't know if things change right now, but growing up, that wasn't the case for me. And we don't have access to like public libraries. And so I didn't realize that until I published my first children's book in 2021, Proud in Her Hijab. And then the book was cataloged in a library in St. Paul, Minnesota. And that day when I went there and checked it out, and my husband took a picture of me there, and it just hit me I had that experience. And the first time I had the opportunity to read a children's book was when I was a 6th grader. And it was the Amharic. Amharic is the national language for Ethiopia. There are different languages. We have 80 ethnic groups in Ethiopia. We have 80 different languages. It's a very rich culture of their own. So the first book that I read is the Amharic translation of Pinocchio. The kid when he lies, the nose grows. So it's the Amharic translation. So I remember in one sitting, I had that opportunity from a public library. It was such an unusual visit. and I had the opportunity to read that from cover to cover because I couldn't risk not finishing the story if I had to leave midway, because I even recall that I was hungry, like doing that. But if I stopped reading that, I wouldn't have the opportunity. So I couldn't risk that. So I remember reading it all. And I remember it was like a thick book. So that day when I went there to see my book catalog in the library, because when we moved here to the US, I used to take my little ones to a public library. I, in fact, made sure that we rented an apartment on a building of a public library in St. Paul. That one has a
Oh.
long story of its own. Yes, because I keep calling the property manager, and this was in 2013, just the year that we moved here. So I keep calling the manager, and there's a long wait list. It's like in the center of the city in St. Paul in Minnesota. So I called him, and he would always tell me that there's a long waiting list, because I called so many times to check that the person said, you know what, you can have the apartment. So we ended up getting that apartment. So I used to take my kids to that public library for read alouds, and they would sit in. And then I used to get so fascinated about the amount of books, and you can take them outside, like you can rent them and read them at home, and just the picture book, the richness of the story in the books, it just used to fascinate me. And I'm talking 10 years back. So I think, to have my books getting cataloged in the same library, and I posted it
Mm.
saying that here are my little kids. They're now grown, like fifth grade and third grade, but they were babies at that time. And I used to take them for story time, like at least 2 days a week. And then now to have that my actual book getting cataloged in that same library, it was just just a full circle moment. But to get back to your question, I guess the not having that and just being a mother, and then also how cybersecurity actually could benefit from going back to the basics, and then just speaking in a language that a sixth grader would understand is so valuable. And
Yeah.
I think that's why, like, my books are from 6 to 14-year-old, and the latest one, See Yourself in Cybersecurity, is for middle schoolers and high schoolers, speaking in a simple language, to understand that. Because if you don't write relatable stories, it's hard to connect with the kids, and that's the whole premise of it. But going back to childhood, the only thing I have with books is, like, I used to love books, but I didn't have the access to it. So it was just, yeah.
One thing that stood out to me along this way is that whenever you mention Minnesota, like I got goosebumps. Like I got, because I think about the climate, and I'm sure that, coming from Ethiopia and visiting DC for the first time, I'm not sure what month you visited. I'm from the DMV, and I know that it could be a little rough. And then, but Minnesota is a whole different ball game. So what was that like? Was it a
Mhm.
culture shock for you to, come? One, you had the culture shock of having access to a library, but what about the people and whatnot, moving to a place like Minnesota?
It's what you said. I mean, you already know it. So Ethiopia is known for as 13 months of sunshine. That means um, we have 13 months against we have an extra month. We have our own calendar. Back there, it's now 2005, I guess, 8 years back. So we have our own calendar and stuff. So um, it's um, it's a warm country, right? Like, it's average. It's like every time is a spring there, or fall-ish.
Yeah.
When we never saw snow, so this is the first time I've seen snow here. And then the month that we arrived is, good thing I don't forget details, is January of 2013. It's like the next day after New Year.
Yeah.
It was very cold and very snowy at that time. So coming here, and at that time I was 7 months pregnant with my second child, and we have a 3-year-old with us, and I have to be on a plane quickly before I give birth, because you're not allowed to fly, I think, after a certain time. I don't know if that thing changed, but back then, like, I had to have a doctor's written something for me to
Right.
go. And then when we came here, it's like it's dark, and like, we were genuinely wondering, like, who are people living here? Like, how are people living here? And still, I get affected. My days are not the same when the sun is out and when it's not. It's just a different experience. So Yeah, we came here not knowing anybody really. We only knew someone that my husband knew from high school, and they just
Mm.
communicated on Facebook Messenger that she's located here. That's the only reason, because people would ask me, of all the states, why did you choose Minnesota? And that's the reason. And she happens to be living here, so she welcomed us for only 4 days, and then she had to go back to Ethiopia because she had not been to Ethiopia in 8 years since she left. So she just had like showed us, welcomed us in her home, very generous, and then she had to leave. So it was pretty much on our own afterwards. So it was a long journey, but it gets better each year, and then you get to know people and then acclimate yourself.
Yeah. And it's all about community, it's all about culture and family. And I would imagine that when you decided to switch from the legal profession into cybersecurity, maybe there was a entry point for you to kind of like cling on to, whether it's a friend, mentor, a book that you love. How did you make that transition from legal to cybersecurity?
That is a very interesting question. None of that. None of that. So for me, it was like in the beginning, once I had, so we moved here in January, and in April I had my second child. It's my first daughter. She's 10 now. And then right after I had her, it was like continuous thinking of where do I want to go from here? Because I knew that I wasn't going to continue in the legal field. So I kept telling myself, like I was choosing. I knew that I was going to go into technology, but I wasn't sure which direction. So it took a lot of months of thinking of where I want to go. So that same fall is when I went back to school to community college that is local in St. Paul, Minnesota. So I just took a placement test in a local community college to go back to studying computer programming, which is crazy at that now looking back. Like it takes a lot of courage, like for not having math classes or anything taken. Of course, I did take in high school, but nothing in law school space. So, and then nothing that would connect you with that. So, I signed up for a computer program. I remember I took my daughter with somebody was holding for me outside of the room when I was taking the placement test to go back to college. I took the placement test and I was placed in all of my major classes, which is also dangerous. At the same time, it's good time saving that I wasn't required to take any math classes or English classes, which is good
Mm.
because a lot of people take time in getting up to speed with that one. So I was fortunate enough in that regard. But then jumping into all the courses, operating system, like just the core classes of computer science, although it's a 2-year associate degree program in computer programming, specifically Java. So for 2 years, I took that and graduated in 2016 with computer programming. Still didn't figure out where I want to go or how I want to work. I just wanted to work in, like, learn tech and be in technology, I guess. So it wasn't good enough for me. So at that point, I did a transfer to a 4-year degree university to do computer science bachelor's degree again. And that was completed in 2018. And you can notice that by that time, I already have my third child. And so during that computer science program in undergrad is when I discovered cybersecurity, and that is through my participation in a cyber defense competition. It's called CCDC. It's a Minnesota Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition. That opportunity came to the school, and I wasn't sure still until senior year. Besides, doing all the math classes I run away back in Ethiopia, they all came back to me in full force. Like all kinds of math. I'm talking about all kinds of math for computer science degree. And I just discovered that I wasn't bad at math. I was just running away from it for no reason. So I took all of those classes, and then in senior year, I had that opportunity to participate in a cyber defense competition. Long story short, it was a full class of students who registered to participate in that competition, but only 8 people were needed to represent the university. So that exposure of self-learning for 5 months on Saturdays and outside of the full-time class I was doing, and at that time I was also doing IT internship at a local government here. I I'm just glad that I stuck out because it was difficult, and then just getting selected to represent the university to participate
Mm-hmm.
gave me like a sneak peek of what security might look like, because that was the only exposure that I had of cybersecurity, because never heard of it. Even you would think that computer science classes would have security classes, but that wasn't the case up until 2017. And I'm talking this late 2017, and then the competition was early 2018. That's when we represented the university, and we came out third place from Minnesota colleges and universities in that cyber defense competition. And from then on, I never looked back, because I thought that like I found my place, like I love doing security. So there were a lot of opportunities for underrepresented folks for in the university in terms of like getting scholarship to get CompTIA certification. So I got certified in Network Plus, Security Plus, CYC Plus, and that's how I got into security. So I always mention about the CCDC competition.
The CCDC is life changing. I also participated in CCDC when I was going to community college.
Ooh.
Back in, this was like 2010, 2011, and it was life changing for me because I thought as a young kid that I was the best at cybersecurity. I thought I knew everything growing up, and when I went to CCDC, I got to see the skill set of not only the people that are, you're defending against with the competition, the attackers, but also all the other participants, the other colleges. West Point was there. They ultimately won the competition, and it was a wake up call, but in the best way. You said that community wasn't a part of the transition, but it sounds like, underneath of that story there is the element of community, and it's maybe community college and university. I feel like when I look back at my career, especially, the beginning is always the hardest. It was being around other people and seeing that I wasn't the only one with questions, seeing that, hey, I actually excel in some of these areas in ways that I had no other measurement against until being around others. And I would imagine that, maybe there was some of that aspect for you as well, where, speaking to an instructor or speaking to your classmates, having someone hold your baby, that is beautiful to be able to, go and take that
Absolutely.
entry exam and get your way back into school.
Oh, and I had to take two breaks because I ended up listening to the baby cry, and then I'm like back on break. But I ended up going. But I told them when I joined, like I had to nurse the baby, 'cause that's the only nutrient, like food that the baby has, because the baby was young. So I remember that I had to get out to nurse twice. I always tell that story. But you're right, what you said. Um, my story isn't like you pivot from legal to security, but it's like a complete reset in terms of like I had to do all of the
Mhm.
schooling from associate degree, and yeah, that is a community for, of course, and then doing the undergrad school in computer science, and to discover that, I mean, that was, I guess, the journey meant for me to discover that is to go through all that schooling and then discover that the CCDC. And then also the professor who brought up that idea, like if it wasn't for him, he is the one who said, I will be coaching for a cyber defense competition representing the
Mm.
school. So who would be willing to get recruited? And I joined that. So initially, when I answered that question, it's like, it's not like I had a mentor. I never had a mentor until 2020. And my mentor is he's AJR. And until 2020. And it's just, I grew up in a culture where we weren't taught that you could have a mentor, or it's like always like struggle and figure it out on your own. And I'm learning that that isn't the case all the time. Like it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have, it's very valuable. Now I advocate for it. Like it's good to have mentors who can help you and make things easier for you, because that's the whole point of it, right? It's the difference between struggle and getting the helps that you need without it. So
When we had our call before the podcast, I mentioned one of your books, "Oh No, Hacked Again," and I asked you, I was like, "Hey, was this about you? Was this about someone in your life?" And then you let me know that your kids have been hacked. So that was mind blowing to me. But I thought, wow, that's a really cool reason to write a book. It applies to the things that you know. What's the story behind Oh No, Hacked Again? Like, what's the story behind getting that initial seed for writing it?
Yeah. So Oh No, Hacked Again is my second children's book. As you can see it in the background. I have it here too. Yeah, this is it. I don't know if you can see it. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
so these are all my kids. In 2020, late 2021, it was the midst of the pandemic, and our kids were, let's say, they were playing a little bit of too much gaming online. Um, and also that was also their means of socializing with other people, their friends, their cousins, and maybe strangers. You never know with online games. So they got hacked not once, but I think twice on different occasions, and another attempt with online predator, which got averted
Mm.
by mom. So when those things happened, it just gave me like a wake up call. Okay, like we are very quick to give these kids the gadgets and the tablets they need and connect them to the internet. And we're busy usually. And at that time, we were working from home. I was in grad school. And there was also a baby at that time, like the fourth one. So it was like, it's just a wake up call, like seeing the kids getting hacked in different occasions. And then also I would see on social media, parenting social media groups that they were posting like my kids got hacked and he's asking me to buy this and this, the digital coins. I'm not going to name specific games, digital currencies, but they were asking their parents to buy and replace for them, and how they're seeing it such a serious thing. And they get hacked and lose control of their accounts. Usually they would cry, like this is a serious business to them,
Yeah.
and they would ask for their accounts to be the digital currencies to be replaced for them and that type of thing. So, and at that time I just finished publishing and released my first children's book, Proud in Her Hijab. And then this happened. So I'm like, okay, this is happening. It's likely happening in other places as well. So let's write our story, right? Let's share this. And I haven't found a lot of literatures for their age group also to teach about online safety and technology, safe use of it. So what I did was I just shared those instances and scenarios of the hacks that happened with my kids and then the potential online predator incident. And then, just wrote it in a language that's understandable for 6 to 14-year-old. And the story was told from the perspective of Ilham, one of my daughter, who got also hacked, and she's narrating the story. So it's really beautiful because every time I go for author visits, I ask them like, who plays online game? Everybody raises their hand. They tell stories about how they got hacked. Initially, they were like, okay, let's listen to the story. An author is here. But once I asked that question, they're like very eager, asking questions. Like they were asking, like, is this you? Are they real? Is that like, have you ever been hacked? Like all those conversations would be sparked and they would ask interesting questions. So this is meant to start great conversation on how to protect our kids about online safety, and then also how to create that exposure for our younger children to work in cybersecurity, because we know that cybersecurity is not diverse, gender or racial wise. So, and they see someone who looks like me in the characters of the book,
Mhm.
saving the day, sort of advising the hacked, girl in the book how to, and giving her advice and that type of thing and recovering from it. So it has that two important messages, but there are also subtle messages within the book in terms of advocating for diversity within the industry and also encouraging our young children to see themselves. I mean, it wasn't taught at that point with the third book, but it sort of laid a foundation because the main character was saying that she wants to become a cybersecurity professional when she grow up because of
Mm.
what she sees in her mom, and knowing, and she talks about what they do. This is what my mom does, by the way. So I want to be like her, kind of thing. So it made kind of a foundation for the other one, which happened to be, it's not even a series, but that's how it turned out to be. So that was the foundation. I mean, the book since I wrote that, I was able to connect with a lot of children in terms of having this important conversation, as well as doing some good, TV and media segments with Good Morning America, 11 Alive in Atlanta, and also WCCO here in Minnesota, different media places. So it's been a great experience so far, and it continues to make impact in terms of my TEDx as well, which I have done last year, towards the end of last year, in ensuring children's online safety and how do we empower them in their online safety journey. It's about that. It's all online.
It's very kind of striking to me because like one aspect of security that I think I overlook as an individual is children's safety and children's security. And I think that when you look at something like Fortnite, like a lot of kids love to play Fortnite, that's part of their identity. They have, like you're saying, they have their own currency. If they lose that money, it's almost like they're losing equivalent to adult money. Like it feels that real for a kid. I'm curious, what would young Zinet say about this book? Like, what do you think your reaction would be after reading Oh No, Hacked Again as a young Zinet?
I think I would say like someone saw us. I would say someone saw like we're like this is an important conversation. I think, in terms of I would understand that okay, there is a career that is there to work in this space, and at the same time also, I mean, my growing up is different from my kids here, so I'm putting myself in my kids' shoes, and from the feedbacks that I got from them is that because they're always my validations in terms of every time I write books, because they're heavily involved in the book production process and the self-publishing journey. And I always check with them, like, because they're in different age groups, like 13 and a half, 10 and 9. And I would ask them, what do you think of this? And they would say like, oh, this is absolutely great. Like, this is something that I want to read because it's relatable. Like, that's what I find out. Like, number one, the kids love those gaming stories and hacks, and at least something happened in each family. That's what I found out. And then what better way to relate and relay important information such as online safety and cybersecurity and online privacy, other than something that they can relate to or something that they love. And I think online gaming is one of the tools to go about it, instead of just talking about cybersecurity, what it is and define it. And I mean, it's just, it's part of their daily lives. I think that recognizing that is very important, and then weaving that into what they love and what they do on a daily basis. And this doesn't have to be about gamers, although the story revolves around someone who got hacked while gaming, or this also involves in chatting, being online for educational purpose, just surfing the internet for whatever reason as a kid, and what are some of the things that they should be careful about, having important conversation with the parent. I think that's the main theme of the book. Is at the back of the book, I usually have what are some of the themes that are drawn from the story of the book, is that sparking important conversation with the parent and having an open communication with the parent. Like, the goal is to have, whenever they run into issues online, so that they feel comfortable to come and be able to have conversation with their parents. I think that's the whole premise of it, because kids try to resolve whatever they run into on their own. And we all know that the digital and the physical world is getting blurred every day. And it can quickly turn, that digital life could turn quickly into a physical danger. Let's say they're talking to someone who's a stranger, and because whatever you see online is just the avatar, and who appears to be a kid, a 13-year-old boy or girl, could be a grown man looking to harm them. So they could be saying in the chat, they get too comfortable, and they could say, I happen to be in a neighborhood. If they happen to share their location or address, and they say they want to come and say hi, and boom, that turned out to be a physical danger now. So just having open and routine conversation with our children about the risks of online safety, apart from the benefits of it. And then, just having them feel comfortable to come to us whenever they run into issues is, I think, the main thing that I emphasized in the TEDx and also in this book.
So important. You know, you've done a lot. You know, not even just looking at your cybersecurity career, but just your journey as a person. And you know, on you just had your TEDx talk. You just got another award from the Sans Difference Makers Awards, and I would imagine that your future is very bright. You're just getting started. You're just getting started with this long journey that we call life. What are you hoping to see next?
Yeah, I mean, I currently work as a cloud security engineer at a Fortune 500 organization, and I started as an intern, as an IT intern, interning in different departments before getting my first role in information security auditing at a local government, then transitioning to the state government, and getting promoted 6 months later to become a senior information security engineer, and then to my current role at, this Fortune 500 organization, Best Buy. I mean, like you said, it's been a fast progression. It's been only 5 years since I discovered the field, but this is my third role. And on top of, getting that one, just the continuous learning, right? Because after I graduated from that, the CCDC, discovering the field, the certifications, IT interning, and then also, getting the first role to the second one and the third one. But in the meantime, I was doing grad school, and I just graduated last year from Georgia Tech University with my master's degree in cybersecurity. So I would say, like just the learning continues, and it doesn't have to be in a formal education format. I was also doing relevant security certifications, be it in cloud security or otherwise. The career progression comes in, as long as you keep learning, and that's what requires, the field requires that continuous learning. So I don't have like in 5 years I want to get to this position or to this place, but I know that I love the field, and that's why I continue to solve problems as I see them through my speaking or the TEDx or my publishing books. But I continue to learn, and continue to make impacts and enable the business, because that's what we're doing in security. So I would say like just become a good thought leader within the industry. That's how I always say, like, I don't have like a goal of like in 5 years I want to be a CISO. I've never said that, and I don't see that right now, and I don't want to lie to myself. Like I still don't know where to go, but as right now I work in cloud security, and I love it, and I'm learning so many things, and that's the beauty of getting challenged and learning every day makes it exciting in this industry, like most of us would agree.
Powerful. There's a lot to unpack there, and what I would recommend for anyone is to check out this show notes or description wherever you're listening or watching. Get the book, watch the TEDx talk. Also, check out the LinkedIn course. It will be live by the time this airs. So check out the description and be sure to connect with Zinet. Zinet, you are awesome. I love all the work that you're putting out. I wanted to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for taking some time out of your busy day to jump on the mics and record with us. For anyone that wants to stay up to date with Zinet, be sure to check out the show notes or description wherever you're listening or watching. And with that, we will see everyone next time.